So I'm just curious, what were your comedic inspirations growing up? Like, how did this all start for you?
My comedic inspirations growing up. Uh, it I mean, I liked just all the kind of all the comedies we all loved, things that you wouldn't say necessarily you see in American Auto or my other shows. You know, I loved Airplane and Naked Gun, and those were my favorite movies growing up. And I still sometimes think like, man, I'd love to do something with that level of broadness. You know, and various stand-ups, Eddie Murphy, Rodney Dangerfield, but none of that really impacts the show. I know when I first saw the BBC Office, it kind of like blew my mind. It felt like I was seeing something totally new and revolutionary. And I loved Spinal Tap, so that was a great mockumentary. But this just felt like, oh my gosh, they've opened up a whole new kind of comedy or something. And that's still, I feel like, the gold ring. So this isn't a mockumentary, but I love that kind of that feeling of a fly on the wall, seeing people where the comedy wasn't necessarily just hitting a punchline. It was, the comedy was in people's, you know, foibles and awkwardness. And that's a lot of what I love.
Well, you've nailed a bunch of my favorites, so that might
Oh,
explain why I enjoy the series so much.
okay.
Where did the idea for this series start?
Well, back when I was on the American Office, and I was leaving and thinking about what I would do next, what I would develop, I had been thinking that we would always refer to in the show mandates from corporate, and it would be interesting to see what life at a corporation was like. Not necessarily the Dunder Mifflin Corporation, if anything, a much bigger one. And I'd been thinking, well, that what's a big kind of American industry? Pharmaceuticals or automobiles came up, and so I had developed this or a show a lot like this way back then, a little after I left the office, and it didn't go then. So in the following year, I went the other direction and thought, what is a blue collar working place show? And that's where Superstore came from, and was on that for a while. And then over time, and that show had some success, and we started talking about what to do next. And I had kept thinking about American Auto, and so repitched that, made some changes based on the changing times, and also things I learned about myself as a writer and about what works. So the show isn't that similar to what it was back then, but yeah, that's what it comes from, is a different. I love workplace shows, but what's a different kind of workplace with very different dynamics, not just different character dynamics, but for this one, a workplace where they can make, they have all the power. They can make whatever decisions they want. They're not being motivated because corporate is telling them something they have to do, but they still have lots of pressure to figure out, you know, what the right thing to do is, how to do things.
And I'm like Catherine Hastings. If you ask me what I think about cars, what my favorite parts about them is, I'd probably say broom broom. Are you a car guy?
I'm not, and that's part of it too. I've never been a car guy. I've developed a little bit more of an appreciation than I ever had for them just working on this show and researching it. Sometimes I think that's good, and sometimes I think it's bad. You know, like I think it's like, if it's something I find interesting about the industry, it's something most people find interesting about the industry or about cars, as opposed to me being a car nerd that could point to some distinct, you know, little thing about a V8 and V6 that only other car nerds would enjoy. Yeah, I always think that I've never been really a music person either. So I always thought, like, man, a show like High Fidelity or something, you know, that would I be better or worse at a, you know, something about music?
Well, it must help you write for Catherine, because you're learning as she learns, right? So
Yeah, it does a little bit. And I that is that point of view, is trying to have her understand, you know, have her understand things as I would understand them.
And did you start with that character? Is that where it originated and you built off of that, or how does the process work?
No, well, it's funny. Originally, no, it was, my point of view character had always been the character that is currently the Sadie character, at least in the original pilot. She was the point of view character, and a new boss came in that version. It was nothing like Catherine. It was a guy who was like a Texan, picture like a Tommy Lee Jones kind of person to come in. And it was the crazy world around her. And then I got here, and when I was rewriting the character, it really wasn't even about it being a female CEO. It could have been anyone, and I had to pick someone to refer to in the script, so I made it a woman, but that was never really a part of the show. And then you cast someone like Ana, you sort of inevitably start to make the world revolve around her a lot.
What was it about Ana that made you the right choice for the part?
Ana's is hilarious and real, and can play them both simultaneously. Nothing she does feels fake. She can play intelligent, but also out of her element in a really good way. And for this character, I didn't want it to be just the dumb boss. I wanted it to be a boss who was out of touch and flailing, but not unintelligent. And she's great for all of that. And she just felt like one of those people who is so talented, and yet I couldn't think of the big starring vehicle she's been in to remind everyone this is how good she is, and that role she'd been waiting for, like Steve Carell, we were all aware of before The Office, and then he was in it and we're like, oh yes, he's amazing. So she felt like a good fit.
Yeah, I've been a fan of hers for years. My first screenplay I had written had her in mind for the co-lead. I never got to tell her that, but I don't think I want to show anyone my screenplay either.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to show you some of my early ones either, but yeah. And look, and she's just a delight too. I mean, I'd cast her either way, but and I didn't know how amazing a person she was before I cast her, but just the best attitude, and a cheerleader for the show, and a friend, and just someone we should all be so lucky to work with.
What I like about the show, one of the things is it's got some edge to it. You've got these great characters. There's obviously a lot of comedy, but you also have commentary, some social commentary. Like, how did you find that balance, and when did you decide, like, it's not just going to be about a workplace, but you're going to expand into the bigger global message, I guess?
Well, there have been so many workplace shows over time, so if we all want to try to do different things, explore something different, and another story about how one character ate someone's lunch out of the fridge. I'm not saying that can't ever be a part of this, but it felt like what was exciting about this idea was we could explore how decisions they make here have giant global impact. That's what was different about this show than any number of other workplace shows. And a part of that involves topical issues, social issues, is just sort of hand in hand. I also it's funny because I never set out with Superstore or this show to necessarily do episodes about social issues, and I think maybe it's something I kind of just am drawn to. It's just kind of an interesting thing to write about, maybe because certain episodes feel a little dangerous, and that's a fun thing as a writer to kind of like see how close to the line you can go. Or maybe it's just, I don't know, it's whatever I find funny, but it feels like for both shows, I like to occasionally do episodes that deal with that, but not make every episode feel like it's a special episode about an issue.
And sophomore seasons are often where series find their footing and kind of figure out who they are and then go from there. Is there anything new about this season that we can expect? Any kind of different changes in tone or anything like that?
It's funny. I feel like you kind of recognize the changes you made or what you have after it's done, and after you've been able to step away from it and look at it from a distance, and that you see what other people think as well. I do agree sophomore seasons tend to be the best. I think first seasons of shows, you're just figuring out who these characters are and really what the show is. And then second season, you're just doing, who they are. You're doing all the best episodes that make sense within this show. And then every season after, you still know what the show is, but over time you have to reach. In terms of what I've learned, I mean, I think inevitably we've gotten to know the characters a little bit more. We've sort of humanized them. The relationships have sort of settled a little more. I think Sadie is not, quite as fearful as Catherine as she was in the past. Now it becomes more of a mentor protege relationship. So yeah, the ensemble is really developed. And I think because we are getting to know them more, we'll root for them more, but we also tried to keep that edge and didn't want this to become a show where everyone loves each other and is sweet to each other, that it can still feel caustic and unkind frequently.
I love the edge. I love that every time they walk into the room, you're expecting someone to take a jab, and they often do, but it's like underneath it, there's some love,
Yeah.
and it's like, but they're likable characters, but they're at the same time, they could be unlikable for some, but
I think if we could
thick skin.
Yeah. And I think maybe a good way to say it is like unkind, but not mean.
Yeah, there you go.
I think that's what we were trying to go
Very
for.
good. And we don't need mean anymore. Like enough.
Yeah. Well,
we've had like a mean decade. Let's turn the page.
Yeah.
I did see a familiar face in the first 2 episodes, Eric Stone Street. Are there any other faces and that people will recognize or to look forward to that you can tell us about?
Yeah, we've got a few. Seth Meyers will be in an early one, playing himself, and it's very, very funny. We have Andy Richter will be in one, and for fans of Superstore, Ben Feldman is going to be in one. I've been dying to find something for him. Anyone else that comes to mind? I think those are the key ones, at least early on, that we have episodes for.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. Let me just finish up with 3 words that you can use to describe American Auto.
3 words. Let's see. I mean, I guess I already said my unkind thing, but caustic, global, and
funny.
They also, oh yeah, I know. Funny, ensemble. Those are also generic, but sure, we'll go with funny. How about that?
Yeah, but it works.
All right.
That's what people will talk about most, right?
I hope so. I hope it's nothing, right?
And thank you for your time. And I really am. I'm really enjoying the series.